Welcome to New Day, New You, a Canadian Cancer Society webcast. This webcast is generously supported by RBC, AstraZeneca, and Merck. My name is Lacey Horta. I'm a Cancer Connection specialist and the moderator of CancerConnection.ca. I'm your host. Joining me today are Angela Wright, lead nutritionist, and Brianna Walker, exercise therapist from InspireHealth in BC. Today we're going to learn about nutrition, exercise, and how they relate. Angela and Brianna will discuss ways to be proactive, deliberate, and reasonable when establishing your nutrition and exercise routines. Let's get started.
Hello. Hi, Lacey. Hi, everyone. My name is Angela Wright, and I'm the lead nutritionist at InspireHealth.
And my name is Brianna Walker. I am one of the kinesiologists and yoga teachers here in our Vancouver Centre as well. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you might be joining us from.
And today we're talking about a new day, a new you. So how you can get the most from adding exercise and nutrition and routine into your regular lifestyle.
And starting to look at how they work so wonderfully together.
So just briefly, we're going to talk about InspireHealth a little bit as an organization. We're going to talk about the world of synergy and how exercise and nutrition work together. We'll get into specifics about exercise, some specifics about nutrition, and then how to put those together in your day to get the most out of them, to allow them to work together most effectively. Then we're going to end with some healthy habits specifically for things that you can do and start in your everyday life now. And then closing with what InspireHealth has to offer that might be of service to you.
So just to start by sharing a little bit about InspireHealth, the supportive cancer center that Ange and I both work at. And we really do want to make sure that everyone is aware that we support people across the country. So we do support any Canadian that's had a cancer diagnosis currently or in the past, and their family and friends too as their support network. So our work is quite unique. We really do work with each individual exactly where they're at and give people the tools and the information and the resources to start to take an active role in their health and their healing and their recovery. And we offer quite a big variety of programs and classes and individual support because we believe that a very well-rounded, very inclusive approach to health and health care really does make huge impacts on quality of life for both the patient member and also the support network as well too. And we are a not-for-profit, and we do also have some partial funding through the Ministry of Health. So again, that makes us quite unique. And as of April 2015, we have been entirely free of cost. So there is no fee associated with any of our services, which we were thrilled to be able to do because that really has opened the doors to welcoming people all across the country from all different places in their life to welcome them, to support them exactly where they're at. And through the funding that we received from the government, it allowed us to expand from our Vancouver Centre, where we originally were funded about 20 years ago, or developed, pardon me, to a Victoria Centre on the island, Vancouver Island, off of the coast of Vancouver here in BC, and also in the interior of BC in Kelowna, and which we'll talk a little bit at the end. We have a very big base of online support. So, and for example, just some fantastic webinars that are on the website there, and there's lots of ways for us to connect with people remotely across the country.
So what we're working on today is the concept of synergy. And that's where you can have one thing and you're going to get the benefits from it, say exercise. You can have nutrition on the other hand and the benefits of it. But when we combine those together, they're more than the sum of their parts. So that's the world of synergy. And there's all sorts of ways we use that in the world of nutrition. But today it's the world of how we're building on the benefits of one habit to increase the benefits overall.
Absolutely. So thinking big picture, but also really starting to tease out some of those individual specifics.
Correct.
So some of the ways that we know exercise and nutrition work together is that exercise directly supports digestion. So some of you may know that the colon is actually a muscle, and that not moving the body and not helping the colon to move through the digestive process can create stagnation. So exercise, gentle movements, walks, some breath work, some yoga. There's all sorts of different ways. A good example is some gentle twists. Actual movement of the area around the colon can really help to spread the process of the food moving through the digestive system.
Mm-hmm. In order to do our exercise, we need some fuel. And that's where one of the pieces of nutrition come in. And so we need to be able to eat healthful, beneficial sources of energy. But then we need to be able to digest those properly, assimilate and absorb the nutrients. In this case, we're talking about carbohydrates as glucose, so that we have fuel in the system so that we can fuel that exercise. So we need some of those carbohydrates in order to get the glucose into our cells so that we can make energy, so that we can do the exercise.
And I know sometimes people think, I'm so dedicated to my exercise, I've been working so hard, I'm just not getting the results that I hope for, I've kind of hit a wall. And then often when they start to look at the quality and the types of foods that they're eating, they start to really see those changes in their overall sort of routine and goals that they weren't able to see before.
And the lack of eating around exercise, because one of the things that it goes on with exercise is it creates micro damages in your body as we use the body. And so in order to repair and heal from that, we need to have some good foods in the diet, and ideally relatively soon after our exercise, in order to fix the damage that just occurred, so we can benefit overall. So just even on that fuel piece, it's all about being mindful of the choices that we're eating. Because if I've got too much fuel in my system, in the world of our refined carbohydrates per se, then there's more of a chance for me to store that as fat. If I don't have enough fuel, then there's a more chance for my body to go into conservation mode and hold on to fat. But then if I have this nice amount of fuel on a regular basis, including around my exercise, then the body feels it's safe. I can use up the fuels I have. I can tap into my fat stores if that's what I'm going for. It's all about balance.
And it's all about really identifying what your personal health goals might be and adjusting, really appropriately adjusting your food and your exercise. So again, they're working together. And throughout the presentation today, we'll talk about how to really get a good, complete activity plan, incorporating both good nutrition choices and appropriate exercise choices.
So the big thing, even though we're talking about these synergistically together, we have a tendency to multitask in our society, and we also can have a tendency to multitask specifically while we're eating. I'm sure there's many of us that eat on the go, in the car, at the desk. Energy, digestion itself takes a lot of energy. And so if I'm having to split those resources, so particularly if I'm exercising and eating at the same time, it's going to make both of those hard to get the maximum benefit from either of them. So one thing at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ange and I both love that photo. Just absolute classic. So starting to get a little bit more specific into the conversation on exercise, and I personally love supporting people in aligning their goals and their routines to create a program in terms of exercise that works for them, because it really is one of the most unique and individual things that you can think about when we think about healthcare and self-care. And I love to sort of witness people get the idea that, oh, it is all about me. It is all about my body, and above and beyond that, it's about my body right now. And a big piece of the conversation that always has to happen first when we think about exercise is becoming very aware of where you are right now. And we can get quite attached to what we used to do 5 years ago, or what our family member can do or our partner can do. And we have sometimes a hard time separating what we see in the exercise world around us from what's actually accessible, comfortable, safe, and fun for us. So it really does come down to a conversation that you need to have with yourself, speaking realistically about where you're currently at in terms of your health, your movement, your overall kind of comfort levels with exercise, and then starting to build some structured goals from there. And really honestly, doing something is always better than nothing. So we also sometimes feel that if an exercise that we're doing isn't very challenging or isn't taking us a good amount of time, that we're not getting any benefit from it at all. But all those little things that you've always heard about, taking the stairs or parking a little bit farther away or walking when you have the option, those little choices that we make every single day go a very long way. And again, we can sometimes forget that those little simple pieces in our day, at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of a lifetime, make a really big difference. So something is always better than nothing. And if you're working from maybe starting at a place where it's new for you in your exercise and there's been injury, or you're working through recovery, or you've just kind of fallen off the wagon for a while and you're getting back on track, meeting yourself exactly where you're at right now and doing your best to not be discouraged if you aren't able to perform at a level that you might have been before, and just be okay with starting where you're at and remembering that little bits of activity, less intense activity more often, really is more accessible for the body. So it can be a good starting point to just start with little things throughout the day. And as you can see on the slide there, there's a few different things that are incorporated with physical activity. So sometimes when we think exercise, we just think about aerobic activity. We think about our walks or our biking or our swimming, and that really is just one key component of physical activity. So a good physical activity routine incorporates a variety of activities, and it gives you an opportunity to practice many of the different skills that can be associated with activity. So you can see here there's of course aerobic endurance, so that's our heart, our lungs, our circulatory system, very important for our body and overall health. But it's also important that we take time to focus on building muscle strength and muscle endurance, and that we also take time to work on our flexibility, our range of motion, and our balance. And we can forget that balance and coordination and range of motion are so important to us until we start to have issues with them. So if we are recovering from surgery or an injury and suddenly we don't have the range of motion that we used to have, or as our body changes and we might not have the same ability to balance, we start to really realize the importance of these things. So just a gentle reminder that those are actual skills as well that we can continue to work on and improve. So a good variety in your routine and consistency in your routine can help to support your body long term. And remember that nobody knows your body like you do, and nobody knows you like you do. So taking time to really figure out what activities you'd like to do and giving yourself a whole range of activities throughout your week and throughout your lifetime, because that variety helps us to support our body. And when we think about activities that support our muscle strength, a body that has nice strong muscles is more adept to do their aerobic activities. So they all really do go hand in hand and they work closely together. So by identifying what your current strengths are, what you're currently able to do comfortably and well, and then also identifying maybe pieces where you could be improving or things that you haven't ever had a chance to explore, and start to integrate some of those into your routine as well too. And really important, as I mentioned before, be present in your body each time that you exercise, and remember that each day is a new day, and the body that you're exercising in right now is not the body of yesterday, not the body of 5 years ago, not the body of tomorrow. So do your best each time that you go to be active and listen to your body, how it responds at that moment, and then move on to the next.
And even on that, Brianna, I find that sometimes people find it helpful, as opposed to always thinking about exercise, thinking of activity and movement as like that is all adding up, as opposed to exercise in a
and what looks and what exercise is for one person's body is going to be very different than what exercise is for somebody else. And movement is medicine, so the more that you move your body in general, the more that you take time to breathe and just kind of enjoy being in your body, the healthier and happier your body is long term. And even though it is very individual as a conversation, it is helpful to have some guidelines that apply to everybody. And guidelines are just something to be aware of, as some good structure to start to create your goals around. So exploring some goals a bit further, ideally a body is able to get about 150 minutes a week of moderate intensity aerobic activity. So it can be really any kind of activity. And I always encourage people to explore new things and to focus less on heart rate or focus less on duration of what you're doing and more about finding an activity that you like that you're actually going to do regularly. So within that, there's two important pieces. One is that in order for that activity to actually be considered aerobic exercise, you need to feel a change in your heart rate. So you do want to feel that your heart is beating in your chest. You do want to notice a change in your breathing. So you can tell that there's a level of effort happening, because we do need to challenge our body a little bit to be able to benefit and to progress and to move forward in our skills and our abilities. But it's actually quite a bit of a lower level of effort than most people expect. It's about 65% of your maximum heart rate, and that can be a really good time to connect with an exercise professional in your community to get an idea of how this applies to your body specifically. So there does need to be some effort in the system, a level of moderate challenge that, this feels good, I can do this. I maybe don't love it, but I can comfortably do it, and I'm not terrified to do it again the next day. Yeah. And then the second important piece is that if you can work within that level of effort for at least 10 minutes at a time, that actually gives your body a really good reset, and some of the benefits of exercise, like inflammation reduction, immune system support, hormone balancing, all those things that we know exercise to do for our body. Research has found that 10-minute chunks is actually giving you those benefits too. So if the concept of going for a 30-minute bout of exercise, or aerobic exercise, is just not workable right now, then just start thinking 10. And 10-minute chunks throughout your day and throughout your week can add quite quickly to 150. So good steps to get started with. And then we need to make sure that we're also supporting the body with good, healthy muscle tissue. So we do want to work on activities that build muscle endurance and muscle strength at least 2 to 3 times a week. And again, this is going to look very different for everybody's body. For some people, it might be body weight exercises. For some people, that might be working with weights. For some people, it might be an activity that is more of a sport-based activity that does encourage some muscle growth and development. So again, it doesn't matter so much what you're doing as that you're doing something and that you're working at an accessible level for your body right now. And then of course, very important to not forget about stretching and activities that work on coordination, balance, range of motion, because those do really contribute to a good cardiovascular system, to comfort and ease in your body. And a mobile, stretched, coordinated body does work a lot more comfortably through your exercises and your routines as well too. So lots to think about. And you really can do it. And I always have people talk to me about, well, how am I going to fit this in? How is it possible that I take a very full schedule with all of my life commitments and actually manage to find time to exercise? And really, it is about priority, and there is 24 hours in a day, and you do have the opportunity, whether you believe it or not, when you start to actually look at how you're spending your time in a day, you'd be surprised by how much you can actually fit 10 minutes of activity here or there, or that one yoga class a week, or that one walk with your friends. But if you make exercise something that becomes a priority in your schedule and start to incorporate other things around your exercise schedule instead of taking the exercise and squishing it into a very full schedule. Yeah. So if you shift your priorities to be about exercise, suddenly things do start to shift and it can become more sustainable over time. It's very important that you start where your body is at. So again, meeting with a professional, having someone work with you in your body, or just taking time to really be present in your body and touch base with how you're currently doing. Starting exactly where you are and building up slowly. This gives your body time to adjust and for you to build strength without injuring yourself or without doing something that kind of scares you off because it's outside of your current scope. So work within your current range of abilities, but do challenge yourself a little bit and encourage yourself to explore. And there's this crazy thing that happens, which we talk about all the time here at InspireHealth, is that there seems to be a disconnect between everyone they're wonderfully motivated, they have all these goals, and then for some reason, their exercise routines just don't happen. So take a moment to think about that for yourself and how that might apply. And as always, get help when you need it. And there's lots of resources in various communities. There's certainly resources here at InspireHealth. So if you're lost and you're wondering, how does this all apply to me? Where do I get started? Please do connect with somebody in your community or someone here at InspireHealth.
And I find that when, especially if somebody's had a surgery or a change in their range of motion or ability due to treatment, that's where some one-on-one help can be quite helpful.
Absolutely.
So then there's the nutrition part of this equation. And it's something that we don't necessarily take a moment to sit back and think about, but food is literally the raw materials that we have to work with. So we're building, we're fueling ourselves, it's all the nutrients required to make reactions go. And then, of course, there's that piece of food that is for pleasure and nourishment. And unfortunately, in our society, that pleasure and nourishment piece has gotten to be kind of the focus of why we eat, right? It's like, oh, it's because I like it, versus the long-term gains of how it's going to affect my energy later on in the day or affect my sleep tonight. So remembering that our food choices that we make can affect everything in our body. Absolutely. Our mood, our learning, our sleep, our energy, our development, our hormones, our productivity, and our exercise and everything to do with that.
And I think sometimes what happens is the disconnect is people don't actually know. They don't really understand how the food choices that they're making are directly impacting their body. So again, that's where we can come in, or that's where some of this conversation can clear things up too. Yeah.
The amount of nutrients that we get from, say, this tomato in the picture gives us all sorts of energy to move forward, versus something like a candy bar can actually deplete the resources that we have, because it takes so much to process and get it out of the body. So in an ideal world, what is it that we're eating anymore? There's so many choices out there, and some of them are more beneficial than others. And so when we kind of think back to before the world of grocery stores and industrialization, and I can get a pineapple in any part of the world at any time of the year, our ancestors ate what they could grow, raise, harvest, or hunt, or trade with somebody that did. And that's what people thrived off of. And when we eat those foods in their whole food form, so their original form that they're coming from the ground or from the environment, it comes with all these bits and pieces that we need to break down and absorb that food and then turn on the body and make all these reactions go.
And a moment to speaking about heritage, I think this just does really come back to that concept of synergy, because back when people were eating this really wholesome, really from their lifestyle type of food, there was a lot of physical activity required to produce that food, to grow it, to harvest it, to hunt it. So from the very beginning, there's always been this beautiful combination between a life that's full of activity and physical movement of all different kinds, and a life that cultivates beautiful, rich, wholesome foods. So they've always gone hand in hand. We just seem to have kind of lost that awareness in our society.
And we used to have to expend a whole lot more calories to get those few calories that were available. And now we expend very little energy to get a lot of calories. So we've done some things to our food, and it takes them far away from the source that it comes from in the ground, or in the environment. So if I might have my lovely apple, and it's got carbohydrates that I'm going to use for energy, and then it's got fiber to slow down the release of that energy, all the vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients to make it work in my body, to benefit from it, and then water to move the whole thing through my system. And we can do some stuff to our foods. We can cook them, we can, so I can make apple juice, I can make apple sauce, I can make apple chips, I can make an apple crisp. I'm making that at home.
She makes very good apple crisps, so you know.
And my body is still going to benefit from those apples. And we can sometimes do some things to our foods that take them quite far away from their original source. And then there's more additives and preservatives and fillers and artificial stuff, where now it becomes more of a burden for my body to try to process these things than any of the potential benefits that are still left in that food. So part of it is about taking a look at our choices and saying, okay, would my great-grandma recognize this as food? Would somebody's great-grandma recognize this as food?
Yes.
And getting back into eating foods that the body recognizes and it doesn't cost our body as much work and effort.
A game that I like to play is when you do pick up a food or a food commodity or something at a grocery store or a restaurant, what have you. Think about how different does this look than it would if I was to think about it in its natural form? And if it doesn't even remotely resemble, like for the apple example, if we're thinking about a Nutri-Grain bar that has apple filling in it, how much does that actually look like an apple? And kind of thinking about
it
even
tastes like an apple.
Or even tasting like an apple, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Important pieces.
So, especially in the world of, particularly in the world of nutrition, it's amazing what we think we do versus what we actually do. We're pretty good at having different realities in those cases. So whether somebody comes to see us for individual appointments, or if this is an activity you do just for yourself, food journaling is a great way to figure out what you're actually doing, but then also be able to find patterns around it. So it might look like you're eating lovely food, but are you skipping breakfast? Are you eating in the car? Are you eating 10 minutes before you go to bed? All of these things that can be quite helpful if we take a moment to track what we're doing for a little bit and figure that out. It's bringing that pleasure and nourish piece back into balance. And so we talk here at InspireHealth a lot about something called the 80-20 rule. And that's when, and the numbers are kind of arbitrary. It's not about counting servings or quantities, but it's about saying if 80% or if the majority of the time I'm eating foods that my body appreciates, can digest, can benefit from, actually kind of puts me ahead of the game, then I might choose with some of those 20% to eat the things that I thoroughly enjoy. So the things that are good for my soul. So the pleasure and nourishment part of things. When we start to think about it this way, we also realize there are some things that aren't great for me and I don't even enjoy that are getting into our diet. And those are the ones, when we start to frame them that way, are much easier to let go of. Yeah. And with something like the 80-20 rule, it also means we're never depriving ourselves of something, because the world of deprivation and the guilt associated with cheating, that can potentially do more damage than the food itself. So as a way to get away from diet mentality, it's always giving yourself a little bit of wiggle room and putting it back into the right ratios that your body can appreciate.
And I've always heard you mention to people as well too that if the focus shifts towards things that you can add in as opposed to things that you have to take out, that can be really nice. Oh,
there we are. Exactly. So when I focus on the things that I'm adding in, so maybe you learn about all the benefits of broccoli and cauliflower and cruciferous vegetables in your diet. And the focus becomes like, okay, I've got this in my cart every week, or look at all the variety of cruciferous vegetables I can have. Today it's Brussels sprouts, and tomorrow it's kale, and the next day it's rutabaga. And so when you focus on that, then there's so much less space for those not so awesome things that they start to come down in quantity anyways. Versus if we're focused on the things that we can't have, that's that diet and deprivation mindset.
It's amazing how many parallels we're seeing already. So when we think about just really being honest and really being aware of our food choices, it's the exact same thing that we need to think about for exercise. And in the same way that it helps to write down the foods that you're eating and starting to be aware of your dietary patterns, writing down your exercise and starting to be really aware and honest of the types of activities that you're getting helps you to identify whether it might be holes in terms of, oh, maybe I should add something in here, or where you might be dominantly doing a lot of one thing and nothing of something else. So that awareness piece is huge, absolutely.
A couple other habits. So unless we are having a lovely day where we're taking our time and reading the paper, maybe having a few minutes of yoga or meditation, we're very mindful at the start of our day. The rest of us in general are kind of, we get up and we get at it and we're go and busy. And starting your day with breakfast in those scenarios can be very helpful. It's a way for the body to realize that there isn't a famine. So being able to fuel the body in the morning to get going and do all of those things that we're asking of the body is a great way to get started.
And we'll mention this too when we talk about a complete activity plan, but there can be sometimes the desire to squish in an exercise bout first thing in the morning without having a good breakfast first. So we're here to remind you gently that it is important to have food in your body for you to be using. So not only is breakfast important, but it's important to consider your breakfast when you think about your daily and your morning exercise routine.
Yeah, and we'll talk more details about that for sure. So the other piece is being prepared. So that's one of the things that I often say that I love about nutrition is that we're eating anyways.
So true.
We're all eating. So how can I take those choices that I'm making and upgrade them? How do I bring them along? And lunch comes every day. Dinner comes every day. If I'm out and about and I'm going too long, snacks are going to be an important piece. And so being prepared and being proactive in those scenarios saves you so much in the long run, because our society of takeout and super fast and convenience is there for when we're not prepared. So if I can take my snacks with me, if I take water with me, when I'm planning ahead, what are you having for dinner tonight? That's something you can think about before you go to bed the night before, and kind of being proactive on those pieces. Making big batches, putting stuff in the freezer, preserving, making your own convenience foods. It's not, it would be lovely if we all had the opportunity to make everything from scratch every time we wanted to eat. And it's not necessarily practical. So the more that we can do our own preservation and our own preemptive planning, the easier it is on ourselves.
Absolutely.
And more cost effective too.
I was going to say, easier on our wallets.
Easier on our wallets for sure. And making our home our food oasis. So especially by the end of the day, when we're tired and exhausted, if I go into the kitchen and I have options of cookies and carrots, it takes a lot of this willpower, right? For my brain to go, oh yeah, carrots are the better choice for me right now. And more often we might venture into the world of the cookies or the chips or whatever might be your thing. But if I go into the kitchen and my choice is carrots, and if I want that cookie, I have to go all the way to the store to get it, I'm going to make a conscious effort or a conscious decision. So I'm either going to eat the carrots and go, great, those did the trick, or else I'm going to go, okay, if I actually want that cookie, I got to put on my shoes and
walk
go
there.
Get it and walk
Maybe
there.
We'll walk to get the cookie
and go get it. And then it becomes a conscious decision as opposed to the mindless things that, especially when we're tired and exhausted and on the run.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you're probably getting an idea that a lot of this conversation comes down to routine and scheduling and planning and just being really present in your life through the entire process. And we all know how hard that is. Obviously, our lives are busy. There's lots going on. Our lives are very full. We can get kind of stuck in just going through the motions without taking the time to step back, reassess, and get re-engaged in the choices that we're making and in our routine. But our entire body is made up of systems that require consistency and routine and schedules to really thrive. So it is possible, and it is really up to us to take ownership of that and realize that because our society and our lifestyle has pulled us so far out of some of our natural routines, it is up to us to give back to our body by rescheduling and creating some consistency for our body. And some good examples of the important cycles in our lives are our sleep cycle. Also, of course, that goes hand in hand with our bowel function, our digestive system, all of these different things, our hormone systems. But when you do start to create some consistency and routine in your day, it doesn't take long for you to start to feel more energized, a little bit more alert when you wake up in the morning, more well rested, a little bit more present as you move through your day. So it really is important to just remind ourselves that our bodies are beautifully crafted machines, but they do require maintenance and they do require consistent routine to do well. So when we talk about our complete activity plan, we'll talk about the importance of, again, planning ahead for this. But if you're able to do simple things like wake up, eat, and exercise around the same time each day within an achievable window, you will start to really get a better benefit from both your nutrition and your exercise choices. And it really doesn't stop. There's tons of different things that you'll start to realize when you start to be more aware of what you're doing and start to create some routine and consistency into your schedule.
Routine is also a way that we're telling our body that things are safe. If I can do the same thing day in and day out, that means everything is A-okay. So as opposed to getting into our stress response and being on guard and ready to go, this is a way to just kind of chill out the system.
Yeah.
The other piece too is when we start to get things into routines, into habits, they don't take as much effort to think about them.
Absolutely.
Once something gets to be a habit and is kind of ingrained in our day, the amount of energy we spend to think about it is pretty nil. So like brushing our teeth, right? We don't think about the act of brushing our teeth, we just brush our teeth. And the more we can get some of these things into a habit, the less energy you have to put in to thinking about them, and the more time you can spend developing new habits.
And again, that magic trick of writing it down, starting to really take note of what you're doing and track it, write it down.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're going to break that down into this world of a complete activity plan. So often somebody might just decide, oh, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week. That doesn't give us a lot of information to go from. So we need to break it down into smaller steps. So, and we're going to go through them a bit more detail, but we're going to wake up rested. If I'm tired before I start my exercise.
And if I'm tired when I wake up, I'm probably going to not take the time to really prepare a good breakfast or make the more optimal food choice. Before we do our exercise, we want to be hydrated, because if I go into it dehydrated, I'm not going to get more hydrated by doing my exercise. Pre-fuel, I need to have something for my body to be using. We need to warm up as opposed to going from 0 to 60. We do the exercise itself, the cool down and stretch, the rehydrate, the refuel, and the rest. We'll walk through. And these are all integral pieces, and if you try to start skipping ones out, you'll notice that it starts to fall apart pretty quickly. So waking up rested, that alone is a challenge. It can be hard for us to get good sleep routines going. It can be hard for us to get a good sleep, but sleep hygiene and the importance of a good sleep really is something that we can't ignore and something that we need to take a moment to touch on today. But if you, again, can find some routine in your bedtime preparation, that can be helpful as well. So if you're able to, start to structure your day so that you're going to bed consistently at the same time or within about a 30-minute window if you can, and waking up consistently at the same time. And give yourself time in the morning to wake up naturally. So as tempting as it can be to get that 5 extra minutes of sleep and your alarm goes and you're up out of bed, it's a little bit jarring on your body, and suddenly you're into your reactive mode and you're on hyper alert and you're running through your house. Whereas if you can give yourself time to maybe lie in bed for a little while to just kind of come back into your body to prepare yourself for the day before you actually get up and get going. And some really helpful tips to getting a good sleep so that you're more likely to wake up rested is to focus on your sleep hygiene. So try to avoid really stimulating activities quite close to bedtime, and that can be even something like reading a really stimulating, really entertaining book that all of a sudden you're caught up in the story and you're caught up in the characters and you feel like you've just traveled the world or whatever the characters in the book are doing. But start to incorporate some more relaxing practices. So a good idea is to maybe listen to some nice relaxing music or have a bath, take some time to do a meditation practice or some stretches or some breathing. So more of a soothing activity before bed. And it's amazing the impact that screen and artificial lights can have on our body. They kind of keep our nervous system and our brain in that on reactive state. So if you can move to a dim lit room and turn off your screens an hour or 2 before bedtime, that actually does do a lot behind the scenes for helping prepare your body for its sleep cycle. And important to note that relaxing types of exercise before bedtime can be beneficial, like some gentle stretches, but try to avoid really stimulating activities too close to bedtime because it does energize your body. Exercise is a way that your body produces more energy. So great for the morning and the afternoon, not so ideal for before a good sleep.
The other piece on the sleep we often forget is in order to fit all this stuff in, I'll just get less sleep. And so more and more the research is showing us that sleep is where we're doing our healing and our recovery. And so we can really benefit from most aspects of our day and our life and our health if we're focusing a bit more on this sleep hygiene and prioritizing our sleep. We get to sleep for 7, 8, 9 hours, 10 hours sometimes people need. And that's where our body has a chance to heal, recover, start fresh the next day.
And it's sad that sleep is the corner that often gets cut, because it's absolutely paramount to our body's health and our balance and the routines that we work so hard to establish. If we're not getting time to sleep, we're not getting a chance to solidify that practice in our body. So it is important to get your rest.
It's like our phone being on 5% battery all the time. It would not keep going if we didn't give it some time to recharge. So pre-hydrating. So I mentioned that if we are already dehydrated, many of our activities are, especially those that require us to sweat, we're going to lose water in that process. So we want to make sure that we're not in the hole before we get started. And then also thinking too about, in a lovely hydrated body, our muscles are nicely hydrated. And so our muscles, think of it like a raw steak, nice and mobile and able to move and twist and turn. A dehydrated muscle is more like beef jerky. And that's where we're going to get damaged, right? As we twist and turn and we try to do our activity with dehydrated muscles, we're more apt to get injured.
I love that example. It's very easy to visualize.
So the goal is to make sure we're having some water. And so it's remembering that there are lots of things that we drink. Some of them are hydrating. Some of them are dehydrating. So some of our caffeine and alcoholic beverages and our sugary beverages are going to take more work and effort and more water that's being eliminated from the system than benefiting. So water, rooibos tea, herbal teas, fresh juices, things like that can be hydrating. And then in this world of pre-fueling, I mentioned that digestion takes a lot of energy. So if I have my meal still sitting in my stomach when I go to do my exercise, then I'm doing both at the same time. So we want fuel in the tank. We've all done it at one point and regretted it. So fuel in the tank, but not still sitting in the stomach. So depending on when you want to do your activity, determines what kind of snack or how big that snack or meal is before your exercise. So for instance, if we get up in the morning and we're one of those people that like, oh, I want to get right out the door and get into exercise, that's where something like juice or dehydrated fruit that is like very easy to digest and simple and easy energy to get, that's an okay time to use some of those things because it's giving us our fuel pretty quickly. But ideally, if you've got kind of like less than a half an hour, then maybe something like half a banana or even some dates or some fresh juice, something that's not going to take a lot of time to digest in your stomach. Our carbohydrates are the easiest thing for us to digest. If we've got an hour or two before exercise, so that might be if somebody's exercising after work and it's been a long time since lunch, maybe if they want to exercise at 5:30, maybe it's like a 3:30 or 4 o'clock snack. And that might be a little bit more snack size, but include our carbohydrates, our proteins, and our fats. So they all get released into they all have an effect on how much the energy from our food gets released into our bloodstream. And the more proteins and fats we have with something, the longer it takes to digest in our stomach and our small intestines, and the more steady and long-lasting that energy is, which can be really helpful. And we also want it not still sitting in our stomach. So something like trail mix, where I've got maybe dried fruit, but then I have nuts and seeds. That's going to slow things down. If I have my banana and maybe with some 100% peanut butter or almond butter, that's going to give me a little bit of each. So a good snack size one. If I've got 2 to 3 hours, so say I get up at 8, have breakfast, and I'm doing it at 10 or 11 o'clock class, then I have time to fit in a full meal. And that's including carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So I've got this nice, consistent amount of energy, but I'm still going to have some reserves left for when I go to do that energy or to do that activity.
And I think we all can experience or can think of an experience that we've had when we've gone to exercise and we just haven't had enough food, and it's so much more challenging than it would be if we had just had a good snack beforehand or eaten a better meal a few hours before. So absolutely. And just to remind everybody that this really is very individual as well too. So when we think about sleep and how much sleep we need to get a night to wake up rested, that's something that you need to realize for yourself and your body. And when we think about how we digest, are we a fast digester, are we a slow digester, do we just as a small meal really satisfy us for our needs, or do we know that we need a larger meal if we are going to a certain class? So writing things down, being really self-aware, and all of these steps can help to make them more effective.
And it can change the benefits or detriments that we're going to get from an exercise. I could go to a class nicely fueled, nicely hydrated. I have all and nicely rested, and I've got all this energy. I'm going to be able to do that. If I go to that same class and I'm dehydrated and I don't have enough fuel and I don't have enough rest, now my body can actually sense that as a stress, and I'll use a different response in my nervous system. And then that can actually be more pro-inflammatory or more detrimental to the system. So in the exercise realm, it's checking in on your day too. And
Absolutely.
What's going on, like Brandon mentioned before.
Absolutely. And then, of course, it is important, good transitions, thinking about the nervous system. It is important that we do prepare our body for our exercise. So instead of going, as Ange said, from 0 to 60 in no time at all, taking time to warm up the body. So even thinking about our joints, we do want some gentle movements for our body so that our joints can create their synovial fluid so that we're more mobile and limber in our body. We prepare our heart, we prepare our internal systems for a little bit of activity, then a little bit more, and we work our way up. So a warm-up is super important. It can include full body movement, some really good deep breathing. It can include a little bit more of an increase to your heart rate, and then gradually have that build up over time. So do your best to not go from 0 to full on, because it's actually quite inherently stressful for the body, and you're more likely to injure yourself as well too. And if you skip your warm-up, same kind of idea as a raw steak or beef jerky, your body just isn't prepared to be doing that activity that you're doing next. And then within that exercise, remember the different components of physical activity. So do your best to think about a routine for yourself that incorporates the right amount of aerobic activity, strength training activity, and activities that improve your range of motion, coordination, and balance. So remembering that guidelines are just guidelines, but at the very least, starting to give your body a good variety of routine, because that's a lot more supportive for the function of our whole body. Do drink some water every about 15 or so minutes during exercise, and remember, the sweatier that you are, the more water that you're losing, the more important it is to rehydrate as you're doing. And really, extra fuel is only really necessary for your body if you're doing something that's a strenuous activity for longer than 90 minutes. So don't feel that you have to be actually against snacking as you're doing your activities, because that kind of takes away from the benefit of both, as we mentioned before. So unless you're doing something like marathon training or a long bike ride or different things where you do want to have snacks planned, it really is about doing your exercise, focusing on your exercise, and then we'll talk about replenishing after. And in the same way that we support our nervous system with warm-up to prepare the whole body for that activity, it's also important that we help our body to come out of our activity mode and come back into our rest and digest mode. So a great time to stretch, especially. It's amazing how many people don't do the stretching. Things that get cut, sleep and stretching. Seriously. Very important for the health and longevity of our muscles, our connective tissue and bones, and our joints. Really does it help to improve the actual recovery process. And as Ange mentioned earlier, all this stuff that we're doing, all this planning, all this activity, all this good structure we're providing, if we don't give our body a chance to rest, none of that work is actually being integrated into the body. And it's actually the repairing after the fact that gives our body the improvements or the gains in our activity. So it's really important that you cool down, stretch, help your body get into rest and digest, and then continue on.
So we want to rehydrate after exercise. Being mindful of the more that we're sweating, we're also not just losing water, but we're losing our salts or our electrolytes. So that's where something like coconut water or sea salt in our drinking water can be natural ways of building these electrolytes back up into our system. And then when we go to refuel, I don't want to just come straight from a run and stop and put stuff in. If my heart rate is still up and my body is still working in that mode, then trying to ask it to digest at the same time is a bit of a challenge. So once your heart rate has calmed down, your breathing has calmed down, then some carbohydrates after your exercise helps to replenish your glycogen stores that we use during exercise so that we have more capacity to do more than that next time. Also within around 90 minutes, besides our carbohydrates, also wanting some proteins and fats, because now I need some raw materials to rebuild the little micro tears and damage I did to my muscles by using them. So I need to have our fats to build our new cell membranes and the proteins to build all of our muscle tissue to build things back up.
So not only do we need the time for that repair to happen, but we need the good quality substances to actually fuel that repair. So can't forget that. And then ideally, as I mentioned before, and this is one of our most important pieces that we talk about here at InspireHealth, but really truly our body's recovery, our rest response, and our time to rebuild, and our time to heal. So it's this time that we take to rest, relax, to get a good sleep that gives back to our body, and that's where all this hard work gets integrated. If you are someone that naps well, you might choose to get a bit more rest throughout your day by actually napping. If that doesn't work for you, then a restful activity throughout your day or at moments in your evening, maybe to help you prepare for bed. And it is, I think, important to take a moment to touch on what a restful activity is. Because sometimes when we're talking about rest and replenishment for someone's body, they go, oh, of course, I rest all the time. I watch TV for 2 hours a night. And just because your body isn't moving doesn't mean that your body is necessarily in a state of rest. So doing something that helps the nervous system to come into its rest and digest mode instead of keeping us in that simulated mode through what we're listening to or what we're watching. So taking a good look at what your restful activities actually are and looking at if they're inherently restful for your body. Of course, make sure that you are balancing your activity with your rest. So when you are creating a routine for yourself and when you are working towards these physical activity goals, make sure that there's adequate time to recover and rest in between, because it is possible to do too much. And even if you're doing a less intense activity, and if you're starting small and building up, your body will tell you quite quickly if you're exhausted after your routine, if you're in pain, if adding exercise into your day is really making you more tired, reevaluate, because something's not quite right there, and you do need to make sure there's time to rest. Always, always important to incorporate that. And again, exercising regularly and proper nutrition in combination with a good night's sleep helps the whole body in terms of its systems, and it all starts to work very well together.
So part of all of this today was starting for us to become aware of our current habits and routines.
Absolutely.
So we can't make change if we don't know what we're currently doing. So other habits to start to implement. So becoming aware. Outline a realistic nutrition and exercise goals and putting those into a form that are actionable, not I want to add more exercise into my life.
Yeah, give yourself some concrete steps.
Concrete steps.
Absolutely.
I would like to add this activity at this time, this many times in my week. Yep. So plan ahead. So that's how we build a routine. So that could be having the food ready for your next day, your exercise clothes ready to go. I always have this habit of when I finish cleaning up from dinner the night before, I take a moment to go, okay, now I've got lunches for tomorrow. What am I having for breakfast? What do I need to take out for dinner? What needs to get used up in the fridge? Who's going to be where? Plan the whole day out for the family so you can be proactive in that. Applying this whole activity plan into your schedule. So sometimes we go, oh, I can fit in this right here, but now we just need you to require a little bit more time in there. So when am I also fitting in my snack? When am I fitting in my recovery? How am I making this most accessible?
And it can sound like a lot at first. We recognize that we're asking a lot of you or suggesting a lot for you, but it really makes a difference. And getting started is always the hardest part. And creating that initial routine is always the hardest part. But you'll start to find that the more you do it, the less mental preparation it requires and the less sort of effort it feels like to do these things. And they become more habitual and they become natural. And then you're off on a great routine and you're feeling really good.
Yep. Like we've been discussing many times, prioritizing our sleep and rest. But also writing things down to keep accountable for your changes. So you could be accountable to yourself if you have a friend that you can work together with, or when you see professionals like Brian or myself, that helps us to keep accountable to moving forward with our goals.
It also helps you to give yourself a pat on the back and think, oh my goodness, I've been doing so well. I've been really sticking to my routine. I've been eating all the things that I hoped I would be eating. I've forgotten about these things that I used to do. So it helps you to inherently reward yourself a little bit too, to recognize your hard work, to acknowledge the changes that you're making. It's big stuff, guys. It's big stuff.
And then that also gives you the opportunity to reassess. Is this sustainable in the long run?
Absolutely.
Sometimes we attempt to put some things on, and then they might not work for us.
And remember that what works for you today might not work for you in 5 years. So always reevaluate, reassess, and remember this is a new day, this is a new you. So each time that you go to do your activity, each time that you set your routine, be open to changes, be open to fluctuations. It's natural, it's a healthy part of the process, and just be kind to yourself. Just recognize the effort that you're putting into it, and just be open to change.
Great. So hopefully that gives you some information to start to process and think about and how to build these things into your life.
Yeah, so if you're curious about how we might be of support to you here at InspireHealth, no matter where you are in the country, we are here for you if you are eligible in the sense that there is a current or past diagnosis of cancer, or if you are working with specialists because you have a genetic predisposition to a cancer and you are being checked on regularly and screened for, we can support you in some of those prevention techniques as well too. All that we would need from you is some of your information, which you can easily do online. You just require information so we can be in contact. We'll gather your personal health number or a equivalent number for whatever province you might live in Canada or area you might live in Canada, as long as you are 16 or older. So again, this is for people with a diagnosis and family and friends. We really encourage the whole unit to get involved, and there is no referral required. So please jump on our website, which we'll show you in a moment, and just start to have a look at some steps for you to get started. And if you are wanting to meet with any of our clinicians, in addition to nutritionists and kinesiologists at InspireHealth, we do also have doctors, and these are medical family practice doctors. They're not oncologists, but they do have a special focus in cancer care, and they are here if you're interested to work alongside and supplement to your existing healthcare team. They can be a fantastic reference and resource to ask questions, to explore different conversations that you might not have someone to currently talk to about. And we have an amazing clinical counseling team as well too that work again individually with people, offer support groups, and then we have our dietitians, nutritionists, and kinesiologists. So there's lots of people to connect with. Everything is optional, nothing is required. So if any of this is kind of piquing your interest, really do get in touch and we can explore further options with you. And if you are going to be connecting out of province, our Victoria Centre and our Kelowna Centre do have Medio, or even if you're in province but you're not close to a centre. If you need help setting up Medio but it's something that's of interest to you, you can connect with any of our administrative teams, so at any of our 3 centres, and they can help support you getting Medio started and getting you connected with our clinicians via Medio. So again, we're available for people across the country, not just in BC.
And Medio, I frame as the online secure version of Skype. So it's a way to do video conferencing with your practitioners. So especially if you're not local, and sometimes it's nice to put a face to the voice that's speaking to you, Medio is a great option. If that's not, ideally you're watching a webinar, so you've got some comfort level with technology, but phone is also an option. Or we also have people that, even from out of town, when they're in town or they fly in to come see us in person. So those are all options that are available for you.
Lots of ways to engage, absolutely. So to get started, please go ahead and have a look at our website, www.inspirehealth.ca. You'll find all sorts of fun stuff. There's fantastic recipes, there's blog posts, there's webinars, there's newsletters, there's research updates. There's tons of ways that you can get involved right away and start your learning as soon as you're ready to. And you can sign up directly on our website as well too. So you can register with us. We'll get in touch with you from that point forward and we can take it from there. So everything, as we mentioned before, is entirely free of cost. You can register yourself at any time. If you need support in that process, you can reach us toll free at 1-888-734-7125 and we'll support you from there. If you happen to be near any of our centers, please do pop in, get in touch with us and have a little exploration of our centers, or of course explore what's available online. If you do happen to be close to one of our centers, we hold weekly information sessions called our Fireside Information Sessions, and there is also a video version of this that we will extend to anybody who signs up that's not able to come in person, so a more detailed overview of who we are. So really get started today, and whenever you're ready, we're here for you, and we would love to explore some of these very individual conversations with you directly.
If you are here around one of the centers, we also have a variety of
Thank you so much, Angela and Brianna, and thank you to everyone for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this webcast as much as I did. If someone you know is interested in watching this webcast, please direct them to CancerConnection.ca to view a complete list of our on-demand library. Please take a moment to fill out our survey by clicking on the clipboard icon at the bottom of your screen. Your feedback is so important to us. It assists us with the development of future webcasts. If you're not already a member of our online community, I invite you to join us at CancerConnection.ca. Our community is a great place to connect with others, discuss your personal journey, and other topics of interest. We hope you'll join us again and enjoy the rest of your day.